Nebraska, and I'm a developmental psychologist. I'm in the developmental area.
My name is Rachel Wu, and I'm an associate professor of psychology at UC Riverside.
My name is Anubhuti Goyal. Most people just call me Anu. I'm in the behavioral neuroscience wing of the psychology department. I've been here about 3.5, 4 years.
My name is Steve Clark. Well, my research was, it started out being straight memory guy, trying to understand retrieval processes and how people would retrieve things from memory.
My name's Kurt Burgess, and I'm in the cognitive neuroscience program here. I retired, so I'm actually professor emeritus, so I'm still involved in certain things at UCR.
I'm Jimmy Calentini. I'm an assistant professor of social and personality psychology, which means that, I focus specifically on social psychology and social cognition, how we think about the people and the groups around us.
My name's John Franchak, and I work in developmental psychology.
My name is Annie Dida, and I am a cognitive psychologist by training.
Sure. My name is Megan Robbins, and I am a social personality and health psychologist.
Can you please tell us about the moment you fell in love with psychology?
I think I was an undergraduate student in a developmental neuroscience class. I was a student at Boston University, and my professor at the time, Jackie Lieberman at BU, she talked about how the brain in kids can adapt. So she talked about kids who had brain injury, they fell, or they had some kind of insult to the brain, they stopped being able to speak, and then through a period of time they developed sufficient plasticity and recovered from their injury and were able to speak, and so had recovery of function, and that to me was fascinating.
I think in high school we were able to get our hands on some Skinner boxes to train some rats to, press the lever. At that point, I was like, wow, you can actually study all these things that I've been interested in. As soon as I was able to join a lab as a freshman at my undergrad, I was able to, run my own studies and, design studies, run them and, analyze the data and stuff like that. So that actually made me really, really interested. And I started getting much more passionate about psychology.
Or that one time that really, got me excited with psychology was when we were looking at timing. And so what that really means is, when we're sort of waiting at a traffic signal, we're paying attention to, the color of the light, but we're also paying attention to how long each light was on for, right? So we pay attention to, was the yellow light just come on, or was the yellow light on for a slightly longer period of time? And that sort of helps us make the decision of whether we should press the gas or the brake pedal, right? So this idea of timing is so integral to, all of our different activities, but we often don't realize it. So I started working at UCLA, where I was looking at, is it possible for sort of isolated neural circuits to really keep track of time? Can we teach them temporal patterns? And indeed, it was the case that we could. And so this sort of, led to the idea that timing is so important that it's sort of, part of the neural network. It's part of what the brain does and very important to our everyday activities. And so then I wanted to really understand how that impacts behavior. So I got interested in psychology, and here I am.
Well, my mother was interested in psychology, not professionally, just sort of a hobby, curiosity that she had. And so she would leave sort of pop psych books around the house. When I was about, 13 years old, I think I was a freshman in high school and had to read some sort of book report. It's like, oh, okay, I'll do a book, I'll read this. So there I am, 13, 14 years old, freshman in high school, and I'm carrying around Eric Fromm, The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness. And I think it probably took me 6 months to read it. But I really became quite the little psychology nerd. Found it all very fascinating, very interesting.
So it was in high school, senior year, took a psychology class just because it was available. I wasn't particularly planning on it. My original career goal was to go into the Navy and be a pilot, but I took this psychology class, and all I remember is we were talking about Skinner and rats and reinforcement schedules, and somehow that really caught my attention. And then I was also fascinated by Freud, and it was at that point that I thought maybe that's a career worth looking into.
I'd never even heard of psychology when I got to college. I didn't even know it was a thing. What do I even like to think about? What do I want to, what do I think about normally? And I realized that I think about people, and I think about why people do what they do. And I had this pivotal moment where I went and saw this band play. It was one of my favorite bands in the whole world, this band called the Ramones. And it was such a life-changing experience for me to even go see the Ramones. And I remember not only enjoying the music, but thinking about the crowd for weeks afterwards. I was thinking about why'd that guy do that thing, or why'd this woman do that? I think that's called psychology. And so I returned to UC Davis after taking a break, and I enrolled in Introduction to Psychology, and I enrolled in Psychological Research Methods.
Moment. I think for me, it was when I was a first year as an undergraduate, and I was taking Introduction to Perception with Dennis Profit, and it was my spring semester, and I had been in a few kind of psych adjacent classes. I went in as a cognitive science major and knew that I wanted to take classes in computer science and psychology and neuroscience and linguistics and philosophy, but I didn't really think I was going to be a psychology major, and I never thought I'd be a psychology professor. But in that perception class, I was so, I don't know, just, it felt like someone had lifted up a curtain, and there were all these things that I was finding out about that I was really excited about and didn't even realize that that was psychology. I thought psychology was just things like personality or clinical issues, and then I realized there was so much more to it than I had thought, and I was just sucked right in.
I don't know if there was a moment, but I remember thinking in high school that I didn't know what to major in for college. And fortunately, they offered a psychology class, and I thought, oh man, you get to be curious about people and make that actually a field of study and maybe do that for work. So that sounded really interesting.
In high school, the campus had just added an AP Psych course back. So it had kind of existed when I was a freshman, but it was for more senior students. And so it was a little bit, not something that I thought we could take because it had been removed from the catalog by the time I when I was a pretty young high schooler. But then when I got to be a senior high schooler, they had added the class back for my last year. And so I took that course because I thought psychology would be really interesting. I didn't really know a lot about psychology at that point, but I just knew I was trying to find something that I could do for my future that wasn't, similar to what my parents had done, which was biology, which I did, and it was fine, and it was kind of interesting, but I wanted to kind of find my own thing. So I took an AP psychology course, and I just loved everything about that class. It was fun. It was different in a way that other classes I had taken had not been, and just really captured my attention in a way that I don't know. It's sort of hard to describe, I guess. I just liked it, right? It just kind of resonated with me, and in particular, the topics of memory were the most interesting to me. So that really grabbed my attention of why do we forget things? Why do we remember certain things over others? And how does that kind of shape our understanding of who we are as people and the things that we do in our everyday lives?
What advice do you have for undergraduates searching for love?
Be more active in the discovery process, right? Because sometimes there are opportunities, they don't come to you, right? You have to sort of seek them out. So students rarely come to office hours, professors are always here, we're busy, but we're here for office hours. So seeking out information, going to office hours, going to classes, just enrolling in, there are some seminars that are smaller. So I would see just being more active in seeking out opportunities, not being so driven by very specific and narrow question, but being open to a wide possibility of questions.
I think, everybody tells you to join labs, and you kind of find your passion when you do stuff, right? So people might say, oh, uncover your passion or something. And people might just think, oh, well, if I sit here long enough, maybe something will come to me, right? But it's really just like I developed the passion, in psychology because I was doing psychological things.
This is a story that I was going to get in one way or another.
Okay.
So I went to college and dropped out. I am a college dropout. And I think I'm living proof that you can fail and still succeed in the long run. The reason I think I didn't have a good freshman year is because I did not major in psychology. And the reason I didn't major in psychology was because, you're going to be in college for the rest of your life if you major in psychology, and you'll never get a real job. Well, let's see. Were people right? I'll be in college for the rest of my life and I'll never get a real job. Well, let's see. I spent 34 years at UCR. It's not my entire life. And did I never get a real job? Well, it kind of depends on how you think about the professor gig. There are a lot of times when it sure didn't feel like a real job. It's like, I'm doing this because it's fun. I tell this story to students a lot because the practicalities of the world are there. Like 4 years of college and getting a degree that you can't use, not a good thing. But do something you love, be good at it. Worked out for me. Yeah, my parents were right. I spent my entire life in college and I got this job.
Like any career, you want to think long and hard about it. There's kind of a myth out there that you can't do much with an undergraduate degree in psychology, and that's absolutely false. The undergraduate psychology majors get jobs pretty quickly in a variety of different fields. If you want to go on, though, and be a professional psychologist, you definitely need to go to graduate school. So, it depends on what you're wanting to do in terms of going into psychology as to what kind of advice you would get. My advice to undergraduates, regardless of their major, is everything is interesting if you look for what's interesting. And make use of professors' office hours, even if you don't feel like you need to, even if you're doing well in the class. Professors generally like talking to students.
I would say get lots of experience. So just, read anything that piques your interest. If it's boring to you, unless it's for class, right? Then just don't bother, right? You follow things that are interesting to you, and that should help foster your passion. Get experience in terms of getting lab experience. We have a lot of active research labs where we need help, and that help, is a two-way street where you get to learn what is and isn't for you. It's also important, it's okay if it doesn't work out in the first lab, that it doesn't seem like something that you want to do for a living, then that's important knowledge.